This is Larry Jordan, the host of the Digital Production Buzz. The following interview is an excerpt from a recent program. To hear the entire program, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. Jonathan Handel is an entertainment and technology attorney of Counsel at TroyGould in Los Angeles. He's also the contributing editor on entertainment labor issues for The Hollywood Reporter, and best of all, he's a regular here on The Buzz. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome back.
Larry, how are you?
I am doing great. It's New Year's Eve. How can you not be excited on New Year's Eve? Happy New Year's Eve to you.
That's pretty much right. Happy New Year's Eve.
You know, last week we were talking about the key trends in 2015, and this week I want to look forward to 2016. What trends are you watching?
Well, one of them certainly, and this will be towards the end of the year, is the labor negotiating cycle. So the above-the-line contracts, Directors, Writers, and Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, are all up in 2017. And that means that the negotiations start, probably first with the DGA in the fall of 2016. So we're going to be looking at a process of negotiation that's going to run, basically from when you count the run-up to that and the studying and so forth, probably from September, October of 16 through the spring of 2017.
Well, we've talked a lot over the years about the guild negotiations in Hollywood, but film is now a worldwide industry. What do the guilds do? Are they following other leads from other countries? Do other countries follow the contracts that are negotiated here? Or is this really just an isolated labor incident to Hollywood?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that. There are international associations of writers' guilds, directors' guilds. There's an International Federation of Actors, which is actually not an International Federation of Actors at all. It's an International Federation of Actors Unions. So there are indeed international associations for each of these. In the past, when they've tried to coordinate closely, that hasn't always worked out well. We saw a number of years ago the attempt to unionize local actors on The Hobbit in New Zealand. The international actors were SAG, but the local hires, they tried to unionize through a local union and through coordination through that International Federation of Actors, FIA it's called in the French acronym, and that didn't work out very well. It really blew up in the union's faces. So they coordinate to some extent. They certainly are always meeting and talking, and I think there's awareness of there being members from different countries and of differences in the way residuals work, for example, things like that. But in terms of a tight coordination or workers of the world unite, we don't really see that.
Well, another thought is actors are the largest union in Hollywood. I mean, there's 100,000 plus members just in SAG alone, if I remember correctly.
It's about 160,000, actually, yeah.
That's a fair number. And the reason this came to mind is a couple weeks ago, the LA Times ran an article about unscrupulous agents who were taking advantage of actors, charging them fees for not delivering work and so on. Do you see any movement toward greater protection of actors against unscrupulous businesses that prey on the fact that actors just can't find work?
Well, it's a hard problem. There is one of the city attorneys, or one of the deputy city attorneys, I guess, in the LA City Attorney's Office, has been very dedicated to dealing with that, and has been one of the drivers of legislation that's passed and enforcement actions and so on. But you're always, I think, chipping away at a large iceberg because there is such an oversupply of actors. With all due respect to those who are actors, there just are a lot of people who want to act. There are a lot of people who are in town, a lot of people who pass through town, and so are not necessarily as well informed as they should be about what's legit, what isn't, what can an agent charge you for, which is, basically an agent shouldn't be charging you for anything, should be charging you 10%, and that's sort of the end of it. The problem of managers can be even more difficult because managers are not regulated in any way by the state or by the unions. And so you see even more abuses, frankly, in management contracts than you tend to in agency contracts. And it is difficult, and only a small number of those rise to the level where you're actually going to have a criminal enforcement action on the part of the city attorney. And I'm afraid a lot of people do end up getting burned rather than being protected, unfortunately.
Do you see this staying as the role of the city attorney, or do you see any interest in the state in setting overall legislation that would govern agents and managers?
Well, there is legislation that governs agents, and that legislation is enforced by the state, and there is some enforcement as well by the city attorney. There isn't legislation that governs managers per se, but if managers overstep their bounds and start acting as unlicensed agents, they can be brought before the state labor commission the same way agents can be. I think it's hard, to see that as getting a lot more attention for the same reason that we saw an enormous amount of difficulty in getting tax incentives passed, which finally did pass in California. Increased tax incentives for movies, and that's the fact that the state is essentially its own country. And Northern California has very separate interests than Southern California does. This is largely, not exclusively, of course, but is largely a Los Angeles problem. And when you have so much of the state centered on the San Francisco Bay Area, if you look at at Gavin, the lieutenant governor, the governor, the attorney general, most of the statewide officers come from the Bay Area. And of course, a lot of the legislators come from the Bay Area or from San Diego. They're not all from LA by any means, obviously, or from other parts of the state that are less urbanized. So it's difficult to get things like this on the agenda and actually, effect additional changes if changes are needed.
Well, you've mentioned so far that we've got the contract negotiations coming up, and the contract negotiations are followed far outside of Hollywood. We've talked about the issue of rogue managers and agents. Are there any other trends you're looking at that we should keep our eyes open for the next year?
Yes, and this really relates actually to the contract negotiations, and that is that in 2017, mid-2017, SAG-AFTRA will start its next election cycle. And as we alluded to last week, and as we talked about on the show, the leadership of SAG-AFTRA is somewhat fragmented right now because of frustration on the part of members over certain aspects of the merger process, particularly the health plans not being merged. So that's going to make contract negotiations particularly sensitive for SAG-AFTRA, I think, and that in turn may affect what the DGA decides to ask for later in 2016 in order to come up with a deal that's going to work for SAG-AFTRA as well. So it's an interlocking set of jigsaw parts. The SAG-AFTRA politics, which affect the SAG-AFTRA contract negotiations, which in turn affect the DGA contract negotiations.
Well, the only solution is we're just going to have to hang around this next year and see how it turns out. Jonathan, for people that want more information about what you're thinking and writing, where can they go?
Two places, THR Labor, the Hollywood Reporter Labor.com, and jhandel.com.
And the J. Handel, Jonathan Handel himself, is the person we've been talking to of Counsel at TroyGould and the Entertainment Labor Reporter for the Hollywood Reporter. Jonathan, thanks for joining us today, and have yourself a great new year.
Thanks. You too, Larry. Be safe.
If you'd like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To stay connected and receive updates from The Buzz, sign up for our free weekly newsletter now. Or you can learn more about us on our website. And thanks for watching The Digital Production Buzz.